فيض يا الطاش يلم عنا خط بكتابك الترحيب.
طيب، الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا ما شئت سهلا. ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته جميعا. All of you, welcome to this, Allahu A'lam what number, what episode it is, but to the sort of the weekly ISOP class. طيب, last week we began with Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. To be honest, that's the only thing we did. And we went on a tangent where we discussed, more or less, we stuck to Salah. And that is probably the most important thing. I think I did mention before Christmas, before the Christmas break. Like if you go to a lot of lectures and you go to all these events and you're collecting knowledge, but fundamentally, your relation with Allah is not changing, meaning your salah is not improving, then you're kind of doing something wrong. So salah is one of those fundamentals that, you should really fix. And you should continue to fix. You never fix it to a point whereby you can fix it no more. There's always more you can do. Okay. So now we are, I believe that was unit 7. So unit 8 and unit 9 and 10, I believe, would have been the units that you're doing from this week. Yes, no? Unit 10 and 11 this week. Oh, mashallah. I'm behind. Okay, cool. Okay, begin then. We all know how this works. You guys run the show. So please begin. The Hijrah, well done. Why Medina? Okay. Start us off in Aisha. Why Medina? Okay. Why Medina? Jewish tribes can understand monotheism. Oh, very good point. Good. Anyone else? So they can understand monotheism. Is that how Hisham phrased it, or did he phrase it differently? They're familiar with it. Okay. Good. I've been told to give more time for you guys when I ask something, so I hope you guys are typing in this time and not just waiting for me. It was a growing center of Islam. Very good. Explain yourself, Mesa. So all leaders of the 2 major tribes had accepted Islam. Very good. You mentioned the major tribes of Medina. This is an important point. So Medina, for a number of factors, there wasn't one thing that I could look at and I could say, yeah, that's why. There's at least 3 or 4 things, each of which could have been enough by itself, or each of which was a major contributing factor. Good. Envoys. Any names, Shada? And any names, Elisa, for the leaders, the 2 major tribes? It's good to populate our minds with any relevant details, and the names are always relevant. Especially the names are recorded, they're preserved. Like we know the people who took part in Badr, and we know in Uhud and who was martyred. We know who the leaders were, in Medina. We know Al-Aws wal-Khazraj. Well done. Excellent. Well done. Very good. Okay, let's start with because the idea of the Jewish tribes was mentioned first. So let's start with this. So let's call this reason number one, in no particular order of importance, but this is one of the more important ones. So Medina was known to the Jews. There's a reason why they were living there. Like Medina, I don't know if it's in their book, it was revealed to some of their prophets, Allahu A'lam, but they had knowledge of Medina, and apparently even Mecca as well. Medina, yes. It's an oasis town, or it's an oasis or a collection of oases, meaning palm trees in the middle of the desert. So it's like a fertile land, in the middle of a desert, and also between these mountains. So Medina fits that description. That's the place that they were looking for. Why? Because the final prophet is going to emerge, or he's going to appear in that place. He emerged in Mecca, but he came to Medina. So we could say, he did also emerge there. Medina is where he became famous. Mecca, he wasn't, and he was still lam yumakkal lahu. Allah did not, enable him upon the land yet. So that's one of the reasons. So the Jews were there. The Jews were saying to the Arabs, they would say that, whenever there'd be beef in Medina, whenever there'd be trouble, the Jews would always look, and the Jews despise the Arabs, and the Jews tend to despise anyone who's not a Jew. So the term is Gentiles in the Torah or the Bible, Allahu A'lam. Possibly one translation for it is al-Ummiyin. So al-Ummam, the nations, meaning not the Jews. So they would actually look at the Arabs in a very in disgust, and as if they were lesser people. And even Jews today, they will look at pretty much, if you're not a Jew, then there's a level of sort of inferiority, which they will perceive in the other people. And they will say to the Arabs, whenever something broke out or whenever there's any tensions, they say, wait till our prophet comes. When the last prophet comes, we're going to absolutely destroy you. We're just waiting for him to come. And when he comes, watch, we're going to conquer the world. We're going to dominate. We're going to absolutely massacre you. I'm paraphrasing here. So the Jews were expecting a prophet. Surprise, surprise, they just didn't know that he was going to not be a Jew this time. But Allahu A'lam. This is one of the reasons. Okay. So the Arabs, or in Medina specifically, they already knew that there was going to be a prophet. Why? Because the Jews kept on mentioning, prophet, 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 watch, prophet's coming, watch soon. We wait and see. Christianity was not flourishing in Medina. Judaism, yes. But you could say because Medina was a productive town, naturally attracted a lot of interest, and they would have had possibly some dealings with the Christians in the south. Even Mecca, they had envoys and they had diplomatic relations, to use that term, with other places such as Al-Habasha or the Romans in Egypt also. Hence why Amr ibn al-As was sort of familiar with those places. So the Jews is the first one. We kind of mentioned the main points here. The second one, the Jews would also, so this is the second point related to the Jews, but it's not the first point here. The Jews also, they would stir trouble in that they will cause civil wars to happen in Medina. They will always make the Aus and Khazraj attack each other. Aus and Khazraj are Yemeni tribes. Okay, what does this mean? They ethnically come from Yemen. They're not min al-Arab al-Musta'riba. They're not, Ismail alayhi salam, he married from Jurhum, which was the tribe in Mecca when Hajar was around. When they saw the birds in the water, they came and settled in Mecca. So Ismail married from them. From his descendants, we call these al-Arab al-Musta'riba, the Arabized Arabs. So they were not originally Arabs, they became Arabs, and they descend from Ismail, who was not an Arab because his father Ibrahim was not an Arab. So they descend from Ismail and his Arab wife or Arab wives. And Ismail, his father Ibrahim was from Iraq. So if you go far back, they could have had links with Arabs if you go far enough. But Ibrahim would not be considered an Arab. And his mother was Hajar, so she was from Egypt. So this strand from Ismail, we call them al-Arab al-Musta'riba. The original Arabs which came from Yemen, we call them al-Arab al-Ariba. Supposedly they go back to Qahtan ibn Hud alayhi salam. So the Prophet Hud alayhi salam, his son Qahtan. So we call them al-Qahtaniyun. And from Ismail, we call them Al-Adnaniyun, because one of Ismail's sort of descendants was called Adnan, and he's like the most famous sort of person who tribes go back to. So the Arabized Arabs, so from Ismail, they tended to be more like north-centered, and the Al-Arab al-Ariba, the original Arabs, they tend to be more south-centered. They come from Yemen. So the Aus wal Khazraj, they were from ethnically Yemen. So it's like a different sort of like type of Arab to the northern Arabs, to the Prophet ﷺ. One distinguishing feature between Arabs that come from Yemen, Arab al-Ariba, they are very emotional. Emotional not as in they cry a lot. Emotional as in they're led by their emotions. Okay? Hence, the Jews were able to stir many civil wars. Right? If the Jews were in Mecca, for example, it would be hard to cause civil wars in Mecca because the Quraysh, they're a bit more, let's say, sharp, intellectually speaking. So less emotions, more rationale. And as you go towards Yemen or towards the south, more emotions, less rationale. So now, the Jews would cause these civil wars. And this was how it was. So the Jews would cause these civil wars, or would sort of provoke and contribute towards these tensions. And when the wars would break out, it would be disastrous. The leaders of the Ansar would be wiped out, and the leaders of the Aus and the Khazraj would be wiped out. Okay, so essentially Medina was suffering. It was a place with problems. Mecca, they don't really have problems. I mean, طبعا there's injustice, but the people. Yeah, good. We're getting somewhere now. Good. This is possibly the main reason. If there was to be a main reason, this is possibly the main reason. Why did the people of Medina accept and not other people? And طبعا the Prophet ﷺ, he would go whenever it was the Hajj season. Tribes would come to Mecca. Okay, we all know this. It existed before the Prophet ﷺ came along, right? So when the tribes would come to Mecca, did it never occur to you that he'd actually go to them? He doesn't even need to go to them. They're coming to him in Mecca. So he offered the message to many tribes, and some of them gave a good response. They said, we like what you're saying. We think you're a prophet. We think you're correct. However, we can defend you from X, Y, Z. However, these guys, the Persians, for example, don't tell us we can't defend you from the Persians. Or maybe we can sort of help you out this and this and this, but this condition that you're putting, we can't accept this. So there were various responses. Specifically why Medina and why Al-Aus wal Khazraj is because they had problems. Remember, people with problems more often than not, are more susceptible to guidance, right? Because they need it. Let me tell you, okay, imagine you have lived under a place which was suffering from civil war. You witnessed your father die and your grandfather die. And you realize it's all for nothing. Like we kill them and they kill us, and it just keeps going around. When does it all end? You essentially realize the important things in life. You're less attached to the dunya because you've suffered loss. Okay? In Mecca, there wasn't much of that. They were very attached to the dunya. If they had to choose between following the truth or just continuing with the same old, they'd rather continue with the same old. Why? Because for them it was a good life. In Medina, no, they suffered. They know what the meaning of loss and losing is, especially if that thing is the most valuable thing in your life, right? Your relatives. That's why they invited him to Medina, because they had major problems, which had been continuing. And to give you some details also, whenever there would be a truce, so in between these wars that they would fight, whenever there'd be a truce, the wise people from the Aus, they would try to marry their sons and daughters to people from the Khazraj. And the wise, the respectable people from Khazraj, they would do the same in hope that, now there's bonds of kinship. Hopefully this will stop the next civil war. But then, of course, the Jews will sort of, they would push them onwards. And of course, the Jews controlled the market in Medina, because if the Arabs are disturbed by and concerned with their fighting, if that's what the Arabs are doing, then the Jews were there supplying them. So they were supplying both sides until they sort of like fight. And then the Jews, basically, that's how they ended up controlling the market. One of the reasons they ended up controlling the market. Yeah, interesting. When you compare the past with the present, it's subhanallah. you have the same characters are all here. They're all on the stage, you know, in their places. Okay. What else was mentioned now? I think we're going into maybe some detail at the expense of time. So I asked for a name. Do you know the name, Sheda? The famous envoy is Mus'ab ibn Umayr. Mus'ab ibn Umayr al-Qurashi. Yes. He was like the main ambassador or the main envoy that Prophet sent to Medina. And then you had Bay'at al-Aqaba al-Ula and Bay'at al-Aqaba al-Thaniya, the pledge of Aqaba, the first one and the second one. And also Isa, I asked for some names. Possibly the most famous one, you have Ubadah ibn Samit, and you have yeah, we'll come to this after, inshallah. So Meccan surahs do mention some things Bani Israel related, but yes, a lot of the ayahs related to them are mentioned in Medina. It's to one Prophet, but also to them. A lot of the ayahs came down like for them, telling them, you know, what's wrong with you. وَلَا تَكُونُوا أَوَّلَ كَافِرٍ بِهِ. You know, come and follow the truth. Basically, this is your final prophet. What are you waiting for? Like, you know, swallow your arrogance. Okay. So Mus'ab bin Umair, one of the famous names that, you know, we all should really remember this name is Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh. Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh هو الذي اهتز لموته عرش الرحمن. The throne of Allah shook on the day that Sa'ad bin Mu'adh died, like as to give you the importance of this person. And this never happened to anyone else, not even a prophet. So Sa'ad bin Mu'adh, he has a good story, a very interesting story. And he was a very sincere person. Maybe he was less than 30 or less, and he was the tribal leader, the chief, one of the chiefs in Medina, because there were two tribes. So imagine you're the tribal leader and you're 30 or less. If you go to Quraysh, all the leaders, you know, the old men with white beards in their 50s, 60s, 70s, meaning when someone's reached that age, typically, you can't change it. That's it. This is fixed. He's not going to change it. Whereas when you have young leadership, there's a level of sort of like open-mindedness that they have. So Sa'ad bin Mu'adh, he had this. Okay? This is important. Bear this in mind. Now, طيب. So Sa'ad bin Mu'adh, when he heard the truth, the guidance, of course, probably at the hands of Mus'ab bin Umair, he actually declared in his people, in his tribe, that in you know, dima'akum wa amwalakum alayya haram. Basically, everything on me is haram, meaning I don't know you, you don't know me, hatta tu'minu billahi wa rasuli. Until you believe in Allah and His Messenger, then basically don't talk to me. I don't know who you are. Like, just go away, leave me alone. So imagine, that's why some people, when they become Muslim, or some people's Islam is worth the Islam of a nation, like Abu Bakr as well. So that's what he said. And after he became a Muslim, you will never, ever, ever find one household in Medina except there will be someone who became Muslim in that household. So this is the level of how Islam spread like wildfire in Medina, because of the likes of Mus'ab bin Umair and also Sa'ad bin Mu'adh, right? And he has a lot of other very notable things that he accomplished later on in his life. Just give me 1 minute, Afwan. I just need to do something quickly and come back. Sorry. Apologies for this, not the most professional class. Like, everything good so far? Any questions? So, Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh, I'll write the name here as well. It's a name that you guys really should read about. Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh. Like, he was a major person. And if you're going to see the seerah, like as a film, he'll be one of the main characters. You know, the day he dies is going to be one of the saddest days of the film. Rahmatullahi alayhi wa radiyallahu anhu. And when you're connected to these people, these giants, it increases your iman, because you're looking at practical examples of iman. It wasn't iman in a book that you're just reading. It was iman in human beings, right? Imagine you're watching a film and your iman is increasing. So this is very important. He is one of the main people. Like, people know Abu Bakr and Umar. People don't know Sa'ad bin Mu'adh. You know, you can't really have this among other people, but he really stands out, especially for sort of his example, you know, on this day. And he became after the Battle of the Trench. 100%, yes, 100%. طبعا there's a lot of Sahabas, but the main ones really, you guys should have no excuses to not know. Sa'ad bin Mu'adh is one of them. Definitely, yes. So on the day after Al-Khandaq, after the trench also, Sa'ad bin Mu'adh, and we could dedicate the whole like class to him. Not sure if Isa is going to be happy, but like and he deserves it. So Sa'ad bin Mu'adh, when he approached, in a story, the Prophet ﷺ told everyone, "Qumu li sayyidikum," stand for your masters. Go ahead. I wish Isa, but like we'll miss out on other things as well. So yeah, the Prophet had a lot of respect for Sa'ad bin Mu'adh, and he had a lot of respect for the Prophet ﷺ. It's like, even though he was technically the leader, the tribal leader, he always treated the Prophet ﷺ as if the Prophet ﷺ was far superior to him. So imagine, طبعا, when you read the seerah, it's very easy to think of it as stories as well, just like, oh, they moved house and stuff. And, they moved from Mecca to Medina, and then, oh, give it a bit of time, they went back, they took over Mecca. It's a very superficial. Imagine I tell you now, Isa leaves Pakistan as a refugee, as an asylum seeker. He comes to the UK, and the British Parliament requests that Isa becomes the Prime Minister. Will this ever happen? It's impossible. He's from a different country. Of course, he's British now, but he's from a different country. Why should he? The only time when this happened in history is the Ansar inviting the Prophet ﷺ and telling him, please be our leader. So imagine you're the leader of the Ansar, and you basically realizing that this person deserves to be the leader. We should bring him over. We'll be honored to have him in Medina. And that's Sa'ad bin Mu'adh for you, right there. Like, let's move on anyway. Sa'ad bin Mu'adh is a major name among others. What are the differences then between Medina and Mecca? Right, if you're moving house, right, you want to know what your new house is like, what your new city, what your new environment. What are the main differences between Mecca and Medina? What are the main characteristics of Medina? So in Mecca, how did people, live? How did they survive? What did they do? What was their main source of GDP? Meccan trade, well done. Mecca is وَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ, as Ibrahim says in the Quran. رَبَّنَا إِنِّي أَسْكَنْتُ مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي بِوَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ. Mecca is a place which is barren. Nothing grows, or nothing edible grows in Mecca, right? It's barren. It's just mountains. So the way it survives is because of Zamzam, number one. Number two, because of trade. If it wasn't for trade, right? If it wasn't for that trade, they'd be screwed. There'd be no إطعام من جوع or إيواء من خوف. There'd be none of those two. Medina is the opposite. Medina was fertile. Yes, Medina had vegetation. Medina had crops. They had palm trees. They used to grow things, right? So this is a major difference as well. People in Mecca, there was a climate there, and Medina is another climate. This is the main difference, sort of economically speaking, but also the people were different, as we mentioned. The Ansar were Yemeni tribes, and Mecca, they were Adnani tribes, so the northern sort of Arabs. Very good. Anything else? Anything else with Medina? So where is Medina in relation to Mecca? Had the first masjid. Okay, Allah says, Inna awwala baytin wudi'a lin-nasi alladhi bi Bakkata. But yes, I know what you mean, yes. The first masjid was in Quba. Quba. Yeah. Which is technically just outside Medina, but you could consider it. It's like, you know, Stockport is Greater Manchester. The same way Quba is Greater Medina. Yeah, but yes, strategic for defense, yes, that's one of them, yeah. Hence why they only needed to build a trench on one side, or two sides, or just less than two sides. Medina is north of Mecca. What does that mean? What is the significance? Think, people, think. So if you're in Mecca, usually there's two seasons for you. Imagine you're a bird, right? In winter you'll be there, and summer you'll be here. So if you're in Mecca, when it's winter you go down to Yemen. When it's summer, where do you go? You go north, because what's north? What's north? The North Pole? I hope no one says this. What's north? What is this? رحلة الشتاء والصيف. يعني in the winter they'd be in Yemen, but in summer where would they go? So if you're working in the industry, if you're involved in trade, north is Syria. North is Syria. Good. North is Syria. And why is Syria important? That's where the Roman Empire was, its presence, or the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire at the time. So they will make a lot of money when they go there, right? Because they had this like monopoly between trade between Yemen and Mecca, right? So they're quite far from each other, but they were in the middle. So they would go to these places. Now the Prophet ﷺ is in Medina. This is exactly, he is now between Mecca and Syria. Closer to Mecca, much closer, but he's there. So now he has they're in a vulnerable position, or their trade is in a vulnerable position. And this is going to have, outcomes. There's going to be a lot of drama happening later on, whereby the Meccans felt insecure, financially speaking, because of this point. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Okay, what was Unit 11 about then? Badr, oh, so soon. Did Hisham not mention sort of what happened in the first year, in the second year? Okay, fine. What year did Badr happen in then? Ah, okay. Good, thanks for mentioning this. Yep. Let's talk about the masjid then, now that you've mentioned it. So the first masjid was in Quba. Okay. But the proper masjid was in Medina, right? That's the main one. So let's talk about this. This is very relevant as well. This is a part of the seerah that is so relevant to us today, especially when you look at the state of our masajid. And are we really building them because taking the example of the Prophet ﷺ, or are we building them, because I want a masjid, and Isa wants a masjid, and Shada wants a masjid, and Ahmed wants a masjid, and Aisha wants a masjid. We all just want a rival masajid, and we're competing to see who can have the. Why is the masjid important? What was the significance? Why build a masjid? Community, good. Keep the answers coming. I'll request Isa give out prizes for those who contribute from the ISOC treasury, of course. Community. Shows the Islamic identity, center of everything. Yeah, salah, connection, decision. So community is an important point. Islamic identity, yes. Center of everything, salah, connect. Everything happens in the masjid. Everything happens in the masjid. So the masjid is an embodiment of an environment which is based upon the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? The best places, there's a hadith where it says, the best places upon the earth are the masajid and the worst places are the markets. The masajid is the place where people in the masjid are conscious of Allah. And the markets are the place usually when people are unconscious of Allah, they're negligent, they're focused on their trade. Doesn't mean you don't have markets. Of course, you have to have markets. You know, رِجَالٌ لَا تُلْهِيهِمْ تِجَارَةٌ وَلَا بَيْعٌ, men who neither wealth, neither trade nor, transactions distract them from the remembrance of Allah. Meaning they have to, these people that Allah is describing in this ayah in Surah An-Nur, they have businesses, they have shops, they have transactions, But these things don't distract them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when salah time comes, they go to pray. And the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stops them from, committing anything unjust. So when you have a just economy, an economy based on, justice and integrity, this is what allows, a civilization or a town or a nation to flourish. And when you start to erode justice and there starts to be some exploitation and, as is the case today, that's why you need so many laws. And the laws get complicated, that's not very conducive to growth. So yes, salah is like good. You mentioned salah first. Connections, decisions, that links to what Shada is saying. So it's a place where the community comes together, right? It's a community center. What happens in a community center or in a community library or in a community whatever? You meet everyone from your community there, right? So if the only place you're meeting your community in is the shops, then it's good, but you're meeting for dunya. The chances are you're meeting and what are you going to be discussing in shops? You're going to be discussing, dunya. Sometimes a lot of hatred happens in shops, jealousy, envy, bad transactions, ripping people off. So the markets typically are a place to be distracted and to be entertained, right? You have entertainers. They tend to set up shop wherever there's Market Street in Manchester, right? That's where you'll go if you want to play some music and get people to donate to you, right? So in the market, that's where that happens. In the masjid, imagine when you're meeting for someone, you meet in some masjid, you both came you didn't come to buy or sell or eat. You just came to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala together. This is the best bonds you'll make are those in the masjid. The best friends you'll make are those in the masjid. And the best times you'll have are those in the masjid. So the Prophet now he's creating an environment whereby people can grow spiritually, socially in an upright manner, collectively in this environment. Very, very important. Very important. It can't be stressed enough. And a good masjid, a good environment is one of the main characteristic features of what constitutes a good upbringing in a person. If you look at all the people who there was a strong masjid presence in their lives when they were growing up, you'll find that there's something different about them compared to people who didn't have this environment, right? Because people change under environments. So by having a masjid and by making the masjid the center of everything, right? There'll be men, there'll even be children, there'll be women. The masjid is the center for everyone. By having your center point in the masjid, you've normalized now an environment whereby Allah is first and whereby uprightness is the norm. It's not a case where the masjid wasn't that important. People would be more concerned with the marketplace and with the cinema and with, the stadium and the message just that, just the thing that we'll go to once a week, for example. No, it wasn't that the masjid and the time for Allah was a sideline thing, which is the case today, pretty much for many people, unfortunately. Rather, the normal state of affairs was to be in a state of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very, very important. I'm instructing every single one of you, inshallah ta'ala, when you're choosing a place to live, or if you ever have children, or even now, if you want to sort of go and spend your time, try to spend your time in the masjid. Do something there, okay? Meet people in the masjid. Go and learn in the masjid, you know, go to classes here and there. Because as an environment, it's a blessed environment. And it's one whereby if you become attached to it, this definitely will have an impact on your life and the life of your family. Bring your family to the masjid as well. طبعا some masajid are more conducive to this than other masajid. A lot of them are not very welcoming. It's a case of you come and pray and then you get out straight away, and there's no room for doing anything, especially like, you know, talking and meeting people, and especially for women, especially for children. So remember, bring your frame of reference, not to what masajid are today necessarily, but what they were at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even in the famous hadith, when Aisha was, you know, sat and she had her face on the lap, the shoulder, on the shoulder of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, watching. So in the masjid with him, watching the Abyssinians do the tribal dance in the masjid, right? Can you imagine this happening today? So the masjid was a place whereby it was a place for the community to basically do whatever it's doing, whether it's a celebration. Imagine a tribal dance in the masjid, or where he'd come to greet envoys, the envoys would come to him. So the masjid is the place for everything. There's even a story later on, a few years later, where one of the tribal leaders of an enemy tribe was captured. So the Prophet ﷺ, he tied him in the masjid for 3 days. For 3 days, right, he was tied in the masjid. They gave him food and drink, but he was tied, he was chained, so he couldn't escape. In those 3 days, what was he doing? He was watching. Look, the adhan is being called 5 times a day. Look, the adhan's called. He was watching the Sahaba come and pray, looking at the equality that they manifested when they prayed together. This was alien to him because he's from a very tribalistic, hierarchical society whereby, you know, like, we don't chill with them. Like, there's a lot of slavery. There's a lot of like first class, second class status people. If you're rich and powerful, then, you know, you're in a league of your own. So just seeing this equality, seeing the brotherhood, seeing the love between the people, the Sahaba. 3 days later, he was released, and then he came back to Medina and he became a Muslim. Again, no da'wah was given to him, no active da'wah. He wasn't told, you know, believe in Allah. It was suggested to him, but like, it's just from being in this environment and seeing the effects of this environment on people. Okay, it's amazing. So a masjid is one of them. Also, the first masjid and the brotherhood. Yes, the brotherhood, the means by which it was enabled was primarily, I would say, the masjid was one of them. The masjid was one of them. Like, linking to the point we mentioned before, the Aus and Khazraj, right? Let's say you're from one of those tribes now. There is someone from the rival tribe, let's say the Khazraj, who basically he's responsible for killing your relatives. Maybe he killed your grandfather and this and this and this and this. There are scars in your heart that cannot be healed, yet the Prophet ﷺ healed them. How? Again, think to the masjid as one of the main reasons. If you're standing shoulder by shoulder to shoulder with this person, you're both standing before Allah. So standing before Allah with someone is enough to basically make even your biggest like worries and your biggest grievances something so minor. Like, you're both in the same boat. Why are you fighting each other? You know, you're both standing before Allah. You both have a higher purpose now. You guys have an objective. So don't take your religion today to be just a case of boxes to be ticked. Rather, like, are you increasing in love from Islam? The Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ لَا تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ حَتَّى تُسْلِمُوا. By the one in whose hand my soul is in, you will never enter Jannah until you submit. And then he says, وَلَا تُسْلِمُوا حَتَّى تَحَابُوا. And you will never submit, you won't be a Muslim until you love each other. So if you have hatred towards your brother, if you're jealous, if you're, you know, there's some hatred, there's some feeling inside you that, you know, you wish ill for the person, then basically you're not a Muslim. You've not submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very harsh, but this is from the hadith, okay? And then in the hadith, he mentions a few things. One of them is لا أقول إياكم والبغضاء, beware of hatred. In another hadith also, he's warning us not of hatred, but rather of envy. And he says, وَإِيَّاكُمْ فَإِنَّهَا الْحَالِقَةِ, it's the shaver, right? لا أقول تحرق الشعر ولكن تحرق الدين. I don't say it shaves your hair, it shaves your religion. Okay, so if you compare, let's say hair, right? Hair, you're growing hair, and if you compare your hair to your deen, right? So you're growing your hair, your hair's getting taller every day. So your deen is growing, right? A lot of salah or Ramadan, you just smashed out Ramadan, mashallah. You're fasting, you're reading Quran, you're giving charity, and you're praying, mashallah. You're going to the masjid. So think of this as hair growing on your head, right? Let's just say it like this, right? It's growing on your deen is growing, right? Like your hair. When you have hatred and envy, then all this deen that you've grown is just being shaved off. It's just literally being shaved off right there. So it kind of puts things into perspective, right? Set your priorities straight. If you have any hatred, any jealousy, any of these very bad feelings and feelings of negative feelings, right? Wishing bad for people. And they can be very subtle, especially with jealousy, right? Being jealous of someone. Sometimes you're jealous and you're not conscious, you're not aware that you're jealous. So it's always important to make dua for people. And if Allah's given them anything, ask Allah to give them more and ask Allah to bless them. Like, you'll be surprised in the Muslim community as well, right? We like to think ourselves as angels. Oh, look, we're praying, and we have Muslim names, as if there's such a thing as a Muslim name, as if there's a name that submits to Allah. We like to think ourselves as good Muslims, and I'm going to the masjid, I'm doing this, and look, mashallah, bed and like hijab, or miswak, whatever it is, right? And eating, dates and drinking zamzam and milk and whatever. The Muslim community specifically, if you were to look at the level of jealousy that exists in it, you'll be so shocked, to the level that when a person's marriage fails and they get divorced, you'll hear people talking like as if they're so happy. Like, look, I couldn't get married, so at least, I wish their marriage breaks. I couldn't get the car, so, his car's broken down, alhamdulillah. That feeling is so prevalent in us today. We need to stop lying to ourselves. Like, we really do. And we need to realize, what effect is the deen having on us? Like, are we consuming the deen? Or are we actually, is the deen using us? Are we being changed by the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's very important to fix ourselves before realizing sort of the disastrous consequences of our actions. Just to give you some examples, or when someone fails, like in school or college or whatever, it's like, because you failed, you want others to fail. And it's such a very, very bad, such a horrible disease to have. So an action point for every single person here is to look at themselves, look at their heart. Like, do you feel happy when something bad happens to a person? Or are you someone who, we could start to make dua for people, wish them good? Such a profound thing. So small, but so disastrous, or so amazing, depending on your perspective on it. Any questions so far? I'll take the last 5 or 10 minutes to be open questions on anything we've discussed. Sometimes we've gone into a bit of detail, but I'd rather avoid a lot of detail when it's at the expense of time. So any questions on Medina, on the masjid, or on any of the events that happened, the brotherhood? We call it al-mu'akha. So al-mu'akha is the term given to the brotherhood. And of course, he not only were the bonds reconciled between the Aus and the Khazraj, but also the Prophet ﷺ, he would pair the Muhajirin with the Ansar. So you have the guests, the Muhajirin, and the hosts, the Ansar. The Prophet ﷺ, he also paired between them. So that was one relationship dynamic. And you also had another one, which is with the Ansar themselves, the Aus and the Khazraj. Another one was with the Muslims and the Jews. So the Jews were considered citizens of Medina, and you should all, maybe you guys are aware of the constitution which the Prophet ﷺ, he wrote, right? You can find it, maybe if you check it online. It's called the Constitution of Medina, or Wathiqatul Medina, the document of Medina, where by the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned some articles, and this is actually the first constitution in history, in human history. You could argue it's the first constitution in history, whereby he mentioned a lot of things which were very super, like, revolutionary and forward thinking for the day. And today, of course, we take them for granted. And this calls me to mention the fact that upon the arrival of Islam brought about the first modern state or states. like when you're reading the Western curriculum, you'll find it read that, oh, it's only in the past 250 years or so, right? So after the French Revolution, let's say, so 200 years ago, that, modernity began, right? You had the Industrial Revolution, the French Revolution, they had this idea of, equality and equality and all these things, fraternity and, the human rights and whatnot. For them, it came about at that time. For us, it came about 1400 years ago. And the civilization which was caused as a result of the rise in Islam, whether it's in Spain or whether it's in, Baghdad, in Iraq or in North Africa or in, Syria or wherever, all these places, which is where the West came to learn from as well. These were actually the first modern states. Like human rights existed before they existed there. You had industries, but not to the level of the Industrial Revolution, which there's a reason for that. But yeah, this was the first modern state if you're going to increase your scope and look at where things really began from. And these, where sort of Islamic civilization began, it began from Medina. It began from Medina. In fact, I believe, Wallahu A'lam, that one of the names for Medina in the Jewish books or the Jewish sources is, there's a few names for it, but one of them is the name of the consumer, meaning the city that's going to consume all the other cities. It's going to expand and expand and expand until it takes over the world. And that's kind of what happened, right? So the state of Medina, it expanded and it spread this civilization to like the four corners of the earth, out of the known world at the time. So it's worth checking up on the constitution of Medina as well. Any questions? What more can we do for our local masajid, aspiring to apply principles of the Masjid of Medina? Very good. I love this question. Excellent, because it links to our practical reality. It's not a case of listening to a seerah lecture and then, feeling good about yourself and feeling religious. It's, you wanting to change. And it's not just change in your ibadah, in something that just relates to you. It's changing your community, right? Why doesn't everyone in this group have the aspiration to not just be closer to Allah, but be someone who is making the community closer to Allah? You're helping and you're solving the problems in your community and you're bringing people closer to Allah. So this is an excellent question. So in masajid today, a lot of politics can be involved, a lot of positions and money and authority can be involved. It's best to stay away from that as much as possible until you're in a position whereby you can bring good. But positions of authority always, for most masajid, and unfortunately, it's let's just say let's not say anything actually. Let's just keep it as it is. What you can do is do something. It could be as simple as having a small class for children. Like maybe no one here has finished the Quran. Maybe no one here is very sort of very familiar and well versed in a hadith. But it doesn't matter. As simple as having an event or a weekly session, a weekly class for the youngsters, the youth, right? The young boys and girls in your community. Something as simple as just doing something, keeping the masjid alive such that people can be in that environment. So being like mentor-like figures. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm not qualified enough, I'm not good enough, well, become good enough, right? Be someone who you're able to help people less than you, lower than you. This is how it works. Like you are mentoring the people who are younger than you, and you in the masjid itself, you're being mentored by someone who's above you. So you're attending classes at the hands of someone who is more knowledgeable or more experienced or more aware about you than about Islam and the context of Islam in which you're living in. At the same time, you don't have to be like a complete know-it-all in Islam. No, with the little that you have, you're sharing your knowledge. So this is number one, trying to bring the youth in the masjid, youngsters. And youngsters are very easy to bring into the masjid. And if they grow up in that environment, they're not going to leave it easily, right? Bringing someone into the masjid when he's a 20-year-old is going to be very hard. But bringing them when they're like a 7-8-year-old, very easy. Especially if they hear that you're giving out chocolates in the masjid after your halaqah or whatever it is that you're doing. So this is very important. This is the easiest that anyone here can do. Another one is, I don't want to say events, but like services. Events are one-off. They're impressive. We did an event, or the ISOC did the event, and we got 200 attendees. I'm sure we've all been through that. It's just a numbers game, which a lot of the time there's not real concrete sort of lasting effects. Yes, inshallah. Now, So having services in the masjid which are of relevance, right? So you could say a Quran Tajweed Halaqa is good. What's more relevant, in my opinion, however, this is good, right? It's good, do it if you're able to, or attend them. What's more relevant is actually the meaning of the Quran. And again, we're not saying meaning, we're not saying you have to be a big sheikh, just a group of friends who get together every week in the masjid of varying degrees or varying abilities of Quran. And you're just discussing with each other, right? Something simple, making it relevant, right? If someone's got a problem like loneliness and the lack of, socializing, in lockdown, you could say masajid are limited, you could say. Yeah, they're quite limited now. They're not on full capacity, but I'm not talking about lockdown specifically. So just making it a place of relevance. So whereby you're bringing people closer to Allah, but you're also serving the other needs that they have, right? The community has a need to socialize. There's a need, eating together, for example, there's a need, parents need help with children need help. Maybe even something related to helping people find jobs or find sort of like spouses, or basically being relevant in any way, shape or form. So Allah says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. Join and encourage each other on birr wa taqwa, piety or fidelity, and taqwa, the fear of Allah. So whatever project or initiative you're running, as long as you're doing it with this in mind, it's a good initiative. Okay. So this is just one example. So trying to do, again, I'm not using the word events, I'm using the word services in the masjid, which might take the form of events, preferably from experience, not events which have large numbers. No, small consistent events with a few numbers, where those people who are attending the service or this halaqa or whatever you call it are actually benefiting, and there's bonds of friendship being strengthened and brotherhood or sisterhood being strengthened. And doing this with children is very easy. Yes, well done. You mentioned a key buzzword, tarbiyah. Good. Tarbiyah. One of the main places for tarbiyah is the masjid. And if you remove the masjid, then you've got a very hard job in tarbiyah. I think we'll end there just because of the time. But masjid is one of the main points of the seerah, which is very relevant to us. So battles are relevant, but it's not like after this Zoom call we're going to be fighting the battle. It's masjid, however, is very relevant. Jazakumullah khair. I think we'll end there. Barakallahu feekum. We'll save any questions till next time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.